So you don't want critique, but you don't want petty reasons, quote unquote, but who's to say? Who's to say what's petty? Hi, hello, how are you? I hope you're having a wonderful day. If you are new here, welcome. My name is maddibluhme, and I post primarily writing vlogs and other videos about writing, books, craft things like that. And if you are not new here, then thank you so much for coming back. It means the world to me. So, authors and reviews. This is one of those internet discourse topics that seems to cycle through more often than most. It is always on the fringes, just waiting for one event to be pushed back into the limelight so everyone can share their thoughts and opinions about the function of reviews, how authors should engage with them, and anything even slightly tangentially related to that. I am looking at notes because this is my second time filming. I tried to film off the cuff and it was so rambly. So I was like, no, I need to organize my thoughts a bit. So I do apologize if I'm glancing down. It's just to make sure that I'm staying on track and not going off on tangent after tangent, because otherwise the video would be like 4 hours long and nobody has time for a 4-hour video. Now, if you're not new to my channel, me talking about this might be a little surprising because I don't normally talk about internet discourse things. I don't normally talk about quote unquote controversial issues because I don't want my brand to be rooted in controversy. And despite what the internet may want you to think, I don't think you need to have a public opinion about everything. In fact, I don't even think you need to have an opinion about everything because there's so much and it is so overwhelming, and that is way too much for any one person to carry. So normally I just don't engage, though I do have a lot of thoughts about a lot of this bookish author discourse that just cycles through. And that is why I decided to make this video, because there are a few things that incense me about the topic that I have not seen other people talk about, because a lot of the people that I agree with are book reviewers. And so there's some elements on the author side of things that I haven't seen, and that is partially what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm coming at this from someone who has a book and it does not have a lot of reviews. So I don't want to say that like I've been bombarded with negativity, because overwhelmingly my experience online and with my book has been overwhelmingly positive, but it does have low reviews. So I'm also not coming at this from this like high horse of I wrote a perfect book that everyone agrees is perfect and it's sitting at like 5 stars, because it is certainly not. And I am also a sensitive soul, so I just want to bring that if you are an author or you want to write a book and you're seeing all of this discourse and all of this, people should not offer critique or critique is okay, and it's a lot. So I just want to boil things down to, well, of course, this is my opinion, what I think is sustainable and healthy for authors, especially if you want to have a long-running career in this industry, or really any industry where you have to put yourself out there, because people are going to, everyone's a critic, right? And I think people are allowed to be critics even if they are not doers of that activity, right? I love to judge music and I don't make music, and I'm not so great at drawing or painting, but yes, I am a critic with visual art. So anyway, let's move on. Before I dive in, I just want to start off with a few caveats, because as I've said, my experience on the internet has been overwhelmingly positive, of which I'm so grateful. But on the off chance that this video breaks containment, I just want to make sure that we are all clear about what I'm talking about in this video when I talk about reviews. And I want everyone to be super clear that this video is not a call for cruelty. In fact, I think when we can give each other grace, that is an amazing thing. I have been given grace by some of my readers, and it has been so lovely and so helpful. So I'm not saying that you just need to go out there and one-star everything. And I will talk about this more in depth. I do think that some of us online have lost the plot between what is actually grace and what is infantilizing. So, for the purpose of this video, when I'm talking about a review, I am talking about someone read a book they either did or did not finish, and then they share their experience of the book, of reading it, share their thoughts on it on their platforms, on their Goodreads, their Storygraph, their social media, their YouTube, whatever, their platforms. If it is a critical review, they aren't tagging the author or going into their comments and saying, "You're so stupid. How could you even publish this garbage?" I'm also not talking about review bombing, where people who have not read the book are going to one-star a book because of some external reason. For this video, when I'm talking about someone leaving a review, I'm simply talking about someone read the book, they share their experiences of it. Got it? Let's go. What is my personal opinion about reviews in the context that we have already outlined and we all agree on? I think all reviews are valid. I think DNF reviews are valid because the book's job is to keep your attention in some way, shape, or form from start to finish. And if it doesn't, I think that is worth sharing your experience. The book didn't do its job, so to speak. So I don't know, when people get up in arms about leaving DNF reviews or counting it towards your read goal, I just don't understand, because if something isn't holding your attention, and life is too short, there's too many distractions, there's too many responsibilities, why hold yourself to finishing something that is just miserable for you? So yes, I think all reviews are valid. DNF reviews are valid. I think all one-star reviews are valid. If you have a one-star review with 10 pages of every single thing that was wrong in the book, and it is so critical down to the syntax, I think that's valid. If you have a one-star review because you hated the character's name, I think that's valid. And before you're like, "Maddie, you're an author," wouldn't you not think that the one star because of a character's name is valid, or wouldn't be valid? I think a 5-star review that has nothing more than great vibes is valid. I think a 5-star review that goes into all the reasons you love a book is valid. So if I have to hold that, I think I have to hold the inverse as well, because that is someone's personal experience of the book, and someone is allowed to personally hate or love it, and they are allowed to share that with the world. A lot of the main talking points that I hear when it comes to these reviews are, well, the author tried, so they get minimum 3 stars, or it's super hard to break into the industry, so 5 stars, everybody deserves 5 stars. Or, these are my two least favorite, but you have the, why make a critical book review because the author won't see it or won't change the book? Or conversely, it's really crappy when someone 1 stars for such a petty reason. So you don't want critique, but you don't want petty reasons, quote unquote, but who's to say? Who's to say what's petty? We are really good at justifying things to ourselves. So what you consider to be petty might not be petty to the person who left that review. And overall, I feel like these talking points just really disregard the purpose of a review in the first place. Art does not exist in a vacuum. You did not just fall out of a coconut tree. The conversation around art is just as important as the art itself. At the very baseline, reviews are someone's personal experience of the art. Above that baseline, critique is what we allow as consumers. Critique generates discussion, and it generates movement and life within artistic spaces. When you release something into the world, it becomes part of the cultural tapestry of your lived experiences in the time period that you're in. And when people engage with it, they're bringing their lived experiences in the time period that they're in. And critique is also an incredibly important part of that tapestry. So when people say that leaving a critical review doesn't matter because the author won't change the book, doesn't make sense to me, because the review wasn't, or should not, be written for the author. It is for other people. And critique is the front line defense against slop, especially as AI is oversaturating and overtaking everything. We need to be more critical. Critical reviews are for other artists and authors and creatives to realize that people won't accept slop. This overly positive effort equals accolades kind of attitude simply doesn't help anyone. And to me, it comes across as very much being nice instead of being kind, because it is nice to let someone continue behaving in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable or other people feel uncomfortable. But the kind thing is to point that out so they may change their behavior or they may do better in the future, right? We are done with niceness. We want kindness. And that means telling the truth and being honest and not softening or censoring ourselves to comfort other people when it's at the expense of our own comfort. And again, AI is everywhere. And as AI becomes more pushed on us, I realize that human made isn't good enough for me anymore. Because do you know how many people are so okay with generating slop? Like, I don't care if a robot or a human made it. If it's slop, I don't want it. I'm tired of slop in every single corner of my freaking life. And again, when we have critical reviews, that lets publishers know that we are not going to accept slop. I haven't seen anyone ever say that we shouldn't critique movies, even though they have hundreds more people trying really hard to create this finished product, even if it's just the writing or one actor's acting or a lack thereof ability. We all have this understanding that a movie can just suck. And it's okay to say that. Or if you go out to eat and you order a meal and it doesn't come back to you fully cooked, or the lettuce is wilty or slimy, you're not going to finish it and no one is going to fault you for that. So I'm truly befuddled by the amount of infantilization around authors that I see online. And I don't see this in any other creative industry. And maybe that's because I'm not a part of those industries, but I truly feel like there is something in the water between readers and authors, and it is like an unhealthy, toxic relationship at times. It just boggles the mind how willing some readers are to not desire a good product that you're spending your money on and you're investing your time into. I don't know. Or if someone dares to say that they did not enjoy something that you enjoy and they attack you, or anything the author does is excused for X, Y, and Z. And it truly leaves me flabbergasted, I tell you. And I chose to indie publish. I chose not to query This Cruel Fate because it's a hard sell commercially. I knew the story that I wanted to tell. I didn't want to soften it for meeting commercial demands. So I chose to indie publish, to self-publish my book. And I think that sometimes we as indie authors need to be real for a minute and ask yourself, if you chose to indie publish, do you want to be infantilized? There is a lot of lamenting about how hard it is when you don't have a publishing house behind you, or that it's bad form when these traditionally published authors are inflating their book sales, or the publishing house is inflating book sales to get on a bestseller list. And I agree, it is really hard. However, I am really convinced that a portion of self-published or indie published authors aren't upset at those practices or limitations because it is denying an egalitarian publishing ecosystem, but they're upset that they don't have access to them. If they did, they would do it in a heartbeat, because I see so much of review policing. And trying to continually control the narrative of how your book is received. And I don't like that. I have seen and I have had other people tell me about ARC campaigns where the author stipulates that if you plan on leaving a 3-star review or under, that you either have to wait until 2 weeks post-release to post your review, or you don't even have to bother leaving a review. And that, I have to be honest, it pisses me off. One, you have to stand by your work because it won't appeal to everyone. If you manage to write something that everyone likes, then you will have created the most bland, the most boring, and the most worthless piece of art to ever exist. And again, you cannot create something that everyone likes. So if you don't have some internal confidence or some internal motivation, this industry or any creative industry where you're putting yourself out there is going to like hurt you badly, because people are people and everyone is a critic, right? 2, once you release something, you lose the ownership of the narrative. It belongs to the culture. It is how the culture receives it. Think about how many IPs and franchises there are where people get up in arms about how something is portrayed, and they will rewrite it. They will say they can do better. They will do X, Y, and Z. And I love fan fiction, so this is not like a dig on fan fiction. I think fan fiction is one of the like purest forms of loving an IP, but there's also an amount of hating it too that can be done online, where you think you can do better, or you think you know the characters better. Even with the discourse around Stranger Things, it left so many people disappointed. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I stopped watching Stranger Things because I didn't think it was that good. But again, how many people are up in arms about this story? And that is a hard thing to sit with as the creator, right? But no one is saying, oh, Stranger Things belongs to the Duffer Brothers. You can't say that they did it wrong or what, you know what I mean? Like, you're still allowed to have your critiques. People are going to have opinions. And that's okay. That's great, actually. We're glad when people are engaged enough to have opinions and to have their own opinions. 3, the point of arcs is not to develop a hive mind of yes men to inflate your own ego. It's so that readers with limited budgets, limited amounts of free time can make informed purchases on books. And in my opinion, it's those 3-star and lower reviews that are going to be more informative than a 5-star loved it. And they're going to sell your book just as effectively, if not more effectively, than 4 and 5-star reviews. 4, again, I see a lot of indie authors complain about the continued lack of respect in indie published spaces, and we have to be honest with ourselves. If we want indie publishing to be just as respected as trad publishing, then we have to ask people to be just as critical in their reviews as they would with traditionally published books. We have to hold ourselves to that same standard as much as possible. Again, there are budget differences and there are always typos even in traditionally published books, so I'm not necessarily asking people to be nitpicky, but when it comes to story structure, pacing, character arcs, character dynamics, there are so many free resources to learn the art of storytelling. There are so many writers to get feedback, even if they start out as strangers. My entire writing community was once strangers, and now I feel very close to them. So we have to use the resources that we have, and I think you can still turn out a very high quality story, even if you are working on a shoestring budget. And we also have to be real that since self-publishing has no barrier to entry, there is going to be a lot of slop that people have to search through to find the gems. I don't know. It just angers me when I see authors trying to stop people from leaving honest, critical reviews, because criticism and rant reviews sell books. Like, negative reviews are just as effective as positive reviews for making a sale. Like, I promise bad reviews are not going to kill your career. I promise. Which brings me to my next point. Reviews hurting authors' careers. So another big point I see when people talk about the necessity of softening reviews is because it can hurt the author's career. 1, when in the history of ever has the responsibility of someone's career been on the consumer. No one is owed the career of an author. And while I do believe that we as humans owe each other common decency and respect, I don't think decency and respect is saying this book sucked, but 4 stars. That just doesn't make sense to me. You are allowed to try really hard on something and it still suck. You are allowed to make bad art, and when you are learning, you have to be bad. And that is a wonderful thing, to start bad and get better. And also, when people's money is on the line is when I start to have more of a critical eye, right? Like when we look at fandom etiquette on fan fiction, it's don't like, don't read. Unless they specifically ask for critiques in the author notes, you don't critique it. You just click off. Because that is a labor of love, right? It is not for money. It is not for anything other than the love of the game. When you are asking for people's money, you need to set a standard for yourself and hold yourself to that, because not everything is ready to be published. This Cruel Fate is not the first book that I had written, but it was the first book I published. And you will find many authors who are publishing in that exact same scenario where they were writing many books, or just a few, or maybe it was their first book, but it won't be the first draft. It won't be the first iteration. It will have changed. They will have edited it. I cannot say that word. Edited it, and they have reached a level in which it has met their standard and it's ready to be published. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but essentially be bad at art. But if you're asking for people's money, it's important to hold yourself to a standard that you are happy with and understand that it's not the consumer's responsibility to make you an author. That is your responsibility, if that makes sense. And you're allowed to grow and change. Like, I hope that This Cruel Fate is the worst book I ever write. I hope that I always continue to grow and learn. And This Cruel Fate met my standard, something that I am happy and proud of to publish at the time that I did. And that is subjective, right? And that subjectiveness is where we're going to see differences in reviews, because some people are going to agree that This Cruel Fate was a good quality and they like the story, and some people won't agree. And they are both valid, and it is okay. 2, I kind of already touched on this. All press is good press. When these bookstagrammers have those high-performing rant reviews, sales on that book go up. There are self-published books sitting at 3 stars and some change that are getting picked up for traditional publishing. There are classics that I would sell my soul for. They're sitting at 3 stars. And guess what? They're still being taught in schools. So tying the worth of your art to this arbitrary number is not healthy. And we have a literacy crisis in this country. Like, who's to say that the person reading and low started understood what you were trying to do? Also, if that makes you feel better, just use that argument. They didn't get it, and that's okay. Not every book is for every reader. 3, we're going to tie this back into a previous argument of critical reviews don't matter because the author won't change it. That's true, but if you release a book and it gets 200 reviews and 190 of them are commenting on some wonky pacing, that is some good consumer feedback that can let you know, like, hey, maybe on my next book, I need to work on the pacing again, because you are allowed to grow and you are allowed to change, and you should be continually investing in your skills as an author from one release to the next. People flop all the time and they come back from it. Like, prior to Katy Perry's huge flop right now, and I'm not sure if she'll come back from that. She flopped when she cut off all her hair, and then when it grew back, or maybe it was a wig, people were like fell in love with her again. So there are going to be dips and valleys on anything. And speaking of Katy Perry, someone who I am very critical of in this year of 2026, any successful person, any successful creative has hordes of haters just chomping at the bit on everything they do. And I can guarantee there are people that you don't think they deserve the success they have. You don't understand why they're so successful because their writing is janky, because they're a problematic person, and whether or not you are justified in your critiques or not, that successful person keeps trucking along and they keep being successful. And I'm not saying that critique of someone who's doing harm is meaningless. It certainly is not. But there is a certain level of no person is going to be universally loved. No thing is going to be universally loved. And if you want to further your career and you want to make it, you have to accept on some level that people are going to hate your guts. They're going to hate the things you create, whether or not for a valid reason, but that is out of your control. And there are going to be so many more people who love you, who love the work you're putting out, and that's where you need to put your focus. And if you are frustrated by a lack of reviews, or maybe these early reviews are lower than you would like, I think that that is just a gift because you get to grow and try things out and make mistakes without so many eyes on you. Like, I could not imagine trying to be a young actor as I'm trying to grow up and figure out who I am and become an adult and have millions and millions of eyes on me as I'm trying to figure things out. Like, even at 27, I'm really thankful that post-debut I have this time to just keep learning and figuring things out without every move micromanaged. So what should authors do? You are allowed to be sensitive. You are allowed to get your feelings hurt. I'm also a sensitive soul, but I will never be a sensitive soul online. As someone who grew up online, I really do think that part of the contract you sign when you pull up your browser or when you tap on your app is that you might be exposed to something you don't want to see. The internet is open. The internet is free in the sense of as long as you have an internet connection, there's no barrier to entry. So you have to find the internal motivation and confidence to contend with that. And you can also put in safeguards to protect your experience online. Maybe you mute the name of yourself or your books on your social accounts so you don't see anything related to them. Maybe you hide certain creators or you unfollow or you block if necessary, or maybe you have friends that help monitor your social channels so you don't have to see it. You have a barrier to filter everything that you're coming into contact with. But at the end of the day, you can take those safeguards and you still might accidentally see someone saying something about your work and you have to let it go. As authors, we are the professional, not the readers. So we have to be the bigger person. So maybe that means complaining to your author chat or getting a friend, going to Chili's, splitting a triple dipper and getting margaritas and venting to them. Both of those are wonderful options. Just don't unload online on your public accounts. And if you can't handle criticism, or the thought of someone not liking your book is enough to send you spiraling and damage your mental health, you are not ready to publish. And I say that with kindness because, again, we cannot control what people do. And even in this context where I'm saying I'm only talking about reviews that are posted correctly, that you can still see, there are going to be people who are mean for the sake of being mean. So your mental health is not worth all of that. You can just print out a single copy of your book through Lulu for friends and family, and you can work on building up these healthy coping mechanisms to dealing with criticism or people just being generally uncaring or upset or hating your book. And then when you are ready, then you can certainly take the plunge and publish for the public. That is all I have. Thank you if you have made it this far. I would love to know your thoughts about authors and reviews. I really love discussion and conversation and changing my mind. If you have a different perspective, I would love to hear it, but please let's keep it respectful. If you think I am a huge hater and you hate my guts and you think I am the worst, that is totally fine, but please just talk shit about me to your friends, not in my comment section. I would very much appreciate that. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel. Like I said, I primarily post writing vlogs about my own writing journey, but I do like having these good yap sessions. So I am planning to do more of them as the year progresses. And with that, I will see you in the next one.